Okay, welcome back. We're going to take a look at polysaccharides in this recording. We're thinking about their structure and their function. And so, let's take a look. Polysaccharides, the word means many sugars, are carbohydrates made up of many sugar monomers linked together, maybe hundreds or thousands of monomers. There are many different kinds of polysaccharides. Starches, yay, my favorite food. Glycogen, cellulose, and chitin. And what we're going to do is take a look at each of these examples and their functions separately. So we'll start with starch. Starch is a polymer. It's a big, huge molecule made up of many molecules of glucose. Glucose then is the monomer that makes up starches. So take a look at this picture here. We've got a picture of some starch granules or plastids, and inside those plastids are starch molecules made up of many of these little green hexagons linked together with covalent bonds. Those green hexagons are the glucose molecules, right? The glucose molecules that are linked together with covalent bonds. Okay, so the question is, are there different kinds of starches? Yeah, some of them are less branched or more branched than others. Amylose and amylopectin are different versions of starches. But where are we going to find starches? Well, potatoes are a great source of starch, right? Stem tubers that grow underneath the ground, or grow in the ground. Rice, seeds, and nuts have a lot of starch. Sweet potatoes, these are not sweet potatoes over here. Cassava is what's pictured up there. Cassava is a South American root plant, a root starch that's used as a staple in the diet of lots of people who live in South America and Africa, actually. But where do we... Oh yeah, I forgot. Maize, corn, grains have a lot of starch. All of these things have one thing in common. Where do we find starch? Plants, right? We find starch in plants. What does starch do for the plant? I know for me, starch is great to eat, but for them, what does the potato do for the potato plant? Why does a potato grow this thing? It grows a starch-rich potato as a source of stored energy so that it can, next year, when it starts to grow again, can take the starch, break it into smaller pieces, and use those pieces as sources of energy, right? Break down my starch and use it as sources of energy. So in plants, starch is a form of stored energy. So the function of starch, I'm going to write down, is stored, see, you got to write that correctly, stored energy in plants. Make sure you put that in there. We then use that stored energy and capitalize on it and eat it and use it for our own source of energy, right? Okay, starches, polymers of glucose found in plants, used as stored energy, a place to store their energy. Okay. And by the way, storing energy as starches is kind of bulky. It takes a lot of water to also store that energy, and so it kind of takes up a lot of space, and it's heavy. Big root tubers, cassava, sweet potatoes, potatoes. Plants don't have a problem storing their energy as starch because they don't need to move around. Okay, let's move on. Glycogen is also a polymer of glucose. So glycogen is a polysaccharide made up of many glucose units that are connected to each other with covalent bonds. And glycogen is made up of like highly branched, lots of branches, all right? Those little green blobs, again, are glucose monomers. Where are we going to find glycogen? Well, let's look at the picture to get a clue. Oh, it's in muscle tissue. Oh yeah, we're going to find glycogen in animals, usually in muscle cells and in the liver. Okay. What do you think glycogen does? Big chains of glucose. It's got to be a source of stored energy. It's a great source of energy storage in animals. It's a little bit different than starch. Actually, glycogen is made and broken down in the liver. It's also important in muscle cells. It's a source of stored energy in muscle cells and can be broken down and used by the muscles to move, right? To do what they need to do. We don't store all of our energy, though, as glycogen. In fact, we store a lot of our energy as fats. So if I eat a big breakfast and my body's like, ooh, we have too much energy around, what should we do with it all? It's converted into fats. Why don't we store all of our energy as glycogen? We store some of it as glycogen. In fact, we store about a day's worth of energy as glycogen. So maybe about 2,000 calories of energy is stored as glycogen. And that glycogen that's used is renewed all the time. So we have, like right now, I have about a day's worth of glycogen stores in my body, right? And I keep renewing that. But then if we renew that and we still have extra energy, we make fats. Fats are much more efficient to store. We can, fats gram for gram offer us a better investment, so to speak. We can store more calories per gram in fats than in glycogen. And that's important for animals who move around. We have to move that storage around. We don't want to store all of our energy as big fat tubers somewhere. Okay. All right, so glycogen is a polymer of glucose. It's found in animals, and it's a great form of stored energy, but it's not the way that we store all of our energy. One more comment about that. If you've ever heard about marathoners bonking or hitting a wall, this has a little bit to do with glycogen stores, we're pretty sure. So bonking or hitting the wall means you're running a marathon. It's 26 miles long and 26.2. And you get to about mile 20, 21, 22, and suddenly do not feel good. Okay, you're not going to feel good no matter what, but feel really bad, like you can't move. What's happening? Researchers think that what's going on has something to do with our glycogen stores. When we're running, we're not eating a lot, but you're using up maybe about 100 calories per mile. And those calories come from our glycogen stores. We tap into the glycogen, use it as a source of energy to move. However, you eventually run out of glycogen stores and you're not making more because you're not eating a lot. And when you run out of glycogen storage, you have about a day's worth of glycogen stores. You have about 2,000 calories of glycogen stored in your body. About 20 miles into a race, you're going to run out of those. And then your body has to tap into fat reserves. Now, there's plenty of fat reserves there for most of us. But it's harder to tap into those fat reserves as a source of immediate energy. And so that's why marathoners kind of hit a wall or bomb, because they have trouble tapping into those fat reserves. The glycogen is all gone, if you will. Okay, so glycogen is a polysaccharide that is a form of stored energy in animals. Here's a third polysaccharide, cellulose. Cellulose. Here's a picture of molecules of cellulose. And the first thing you might notice about them is this seems like kind of a long fiber, kind of long, strong lines. Okay. The second thing you notice is, hey, there are those green blobs again. Cellulose is surely a polymer of glucose. Hey, it's made up of glucose also. Okay. And these glucose monomers are put together to form long, linear chains that are rope-like and strong. Where do we find cellulose? Cellulose is found in plants and typically found in plant cell walls. What does cellulose do in plant cell walls? Long rope-like fibers. That has to be strength. plant cell walls, it functions to provide strength or support. You can write both of those down here, strength or support for the cell walls. Okay? And that helps to hold up the plants. So, cellulose. Do we eat cellulose? Yeah, we do, right? We eat plenty of plants. We do. But can we tap into cellulose as a source of energy for us? That's a question. Like this little kid here. If you're hungry, do you just walk outside and grab some maple leaves and gobble them down? Or you do eat some leaves. We do eat lettuce and things like that. But if both starch and cellulose are polymers of glucose, why can we digest starch but not cellulose? We can't digest cellulose, can we? We don't use it as a source of energy. We don't just digest it. Our bodies pass it through. In fact, it's good to get roughage, if you will. Indigestible or insoluble fiber is another name for what we call cellulose, because we can't digest it. We can't break it down. We can't tap into the energy in cellulose at all. Some animals can, but we can't. So the question is why? What's going on? What's the difference between starch and cellulose? They're both polymers of glucose. Why can we tap into the energy in a potato, but not the maple tree in our backyard? Well, we have to look at figure 5.7 to figure this out. All right, it turns out there are different forms of glucose. Glucose, here's our linear version of glucose, can form two different shaped rings. And the ring structure don't look that much different. They're called alpha and beta glucose ring structures, but they are different. So what's different about them? It's the position of this hydroxyl group on carbon 1. It's either kind of beneath or above the ring. And it turns out that starch is made up of alpha glucose monomers covalently bonded together. And we can break that down. We have enzymes to break that down. But cellulose is made up of beta glucose monomers linked together. And we do not have the enzymes to break apart the beta glucose monomers found in cellulose. So we have enzymes is what I wanted to put here. Enzymes are special molecules that can break things down, right? That can digest linkages of the alpha glucose monomers in starch, but not the 1,4 linkages of beta glucose monomers found in cellulose. So we can't tap into the energy that some animals can. Well, how do those animals do it? You know, how do cows do it? All they do is chew on grasses. Can they digest cellulose? Or how do they do it? Well, actually, cows are kind of interesting because they themselves don't have the ability, don't make the enzymes for digesting cellulose, but inside their gut they have bacteria that have the ability to digest cellulose, mutualistic bacteria living in their guts. And, they have a home, but the cows also can benefit because they break down cellulose. It's hard work breaking down cellulose, but cows can do it because of their gut symbionts, if you will. Chitin is the last polysaccharide we'll talk about here. Chitin is a polymer made up of glucose monomers again, but this time modified glucose monomers. And what we see in the picture here is a glucose molecule with an attachment, a nitrogen-bearing attachment to it. And what chitin is a string of these guys put together. Okay, so where is chitin? Well, chitin is found in the exoskeletons of arthropods. So next time you go outside, take a look at trunks of trees. You might see some cicada shells, exoskeletons. They are made up of chitin. And chitin is found in the cell walls of fungi. Fungi cells have walls, and chitin is in them. Chitin, if you think about where it is, you can probably think about what it does. It its job is for structural support, strength or support. It provides strength or structure for the exoskeletons. It provides strength or structure for cell walls in fungi. And so think about this as being a molecule that provides strength. Okay, that's our polysaccharides. We'll move on to lipids in the next video.